The Smoke and Gavel podcast is now in session. I'm retired Judge Chip Small, who will preside over this podcast along with my bailiff, Madeline Rose. We welcome you and ask you to join us as we take a look at our justice system from a unique, candid, and inside view. Maddie, what's on the docket today?
Hello, Your Honor. Today on the docket, you'll explain the origin of your books and your justice trilogy. Then we'll discuss how you were forced to leave your home and avoid a killer on the prowl with your family. I heard he's still alive, too. And then we'll briefly discuss what the next episode will cover, the tragic story of the murder of a local deputy sheriff here in our own hometown.
Thanks, Maddie. So the first item on our docket is the origin of Judge Small books. As we alluded to in our first episode, You're Not a Lawyer Anymore, a primer for those who want to be a good judge, was Plan C of my hope to educate lawyers before they became new judges. That never would have happened except for the wise advice of a local attorney in our community that told me I had to write the book not after I retired, but before I retired, while I was still passionate about educating new judges. So that's what started Judge Small Books. Fortunately, after my book, You're Not a Lawyer Anymore, came out, 2018, I was able to secure the endorsement of the president of the National Judicial College. And I think his endorsement has meant that my book has continued to sell 7 years later, almost every single month. In fact, our district court and superior court judges associations in our state provide a free copy of my book to every new judge. So I thought I was done. I wrote the book before I retired. It came out. Judges were listening to it or they were reading it, and I thought I was done writing, except for the fact that I had started a novel way back before I became a judge, and that novel was Stark Justice. What caused me to write that book was I had had the largest personal injury case of my career as a plaintiff's attorney that went on for 2.5 years working on it, and it was what we call skinny liability, huge damage case. It was a centerline case where my client, a jockey, was severely injured. But because of the questionable fault involved in the accident, there was a very good chance that he would get nothing when we went to trial, or he could get over $1 million. So I worked that case for 2.5 years, and the more I worked on it, the more I thought we could win. I used to be a defense attorney, and if I had been the defense attorney in my case, I wouldn't have offered me anything to settle the case. And they didn't offer me anything to settle the case in my case. So as we approached the trial, with no offers to settle, but with my confidence building, the week before the trials to commence, we got an offer to settle. And it wasn't a nuisance offer. It was well into the 6 figures, and my client was a hard-scrabble, live-off-the-land type of person.
Right. I mean, I read the book. I won't give too much to the listeners here, but we can say that the client was, he wasn't a lawyer himself. He wasn't a suit and tie guy. He like you said, he lived off the land.
Yeah.
Your rural, good old boy, just...
He was a jockey, a farrier, raised his own food.
Yeah.
So when I had to present ethically the offer to settle to him, and I explained to him what it would mean, and for him, he'd be able to basically buy enough land to live off the land and be set up for life. But I told him, but if we go to trial, I could get him 10 or 20 times that amount at trial, or he'd get nothing. So of course he took the offer, and I was devastated. After 2.5 years, I'm a trial lawyer, and in fact, the fact that we settled that case was one of the reasons I put my name in to be a judge, because I love being in the courtroom. But most of the time, it's in the best interest of my clients to settle. So we settled the case, and after 2.5 years, nothing. I couldn't try the case. Well, that happened on a Friday, it was before Labor Day weekend, and instead of spending the entire Labor Day weekend prepping for the trial to begin on Tuesday, I could stay home with my family.
Hey, there you go.
Which I didn't do very often because I talk too much, so I would usually have to work 10 hours a day to bill 7. But in any event, I went to bed that night, didn't set the alarm. I could sleep in Saturday morning, and I thought life was great. Until 6 a.m. Saturday morning, when I woke up wide awake, God telling me, you got to write a book about this. I go, what are you talking about? I don't know how to write a book. He said, no, you have to write a novel about this case. Everybody loved your client. He's an interesting character. You got to write a novel about it. And I said, I don't know how to write a novel. I'm not. That's creative writing. You write for a living. That's how you make your living. I said, yeah. I write briefs. I write letters. I write contracts. I don't write novels. Leave me alone. And he said, no, you really got to do this. So I got frustrated as I couldn't sleep now, and I just said, enough. And I went upstairs, started breakfast. Now it's like 6:30 in the morning. So I pick up a book on my nightstand because before big trials, I don't read anything for a couple of weeks. I don't even read the newspaper because I'm constantly thinking about the case. So the novel on my nightstand was a Chancellor manuscript. It was written by Robert Ludlum. And in the first 45 pages, while I'm eating breakfast, I read about a gentleman who had written his PhD dissertation for about 2.5 years. And I thought, well, I could identify with that, 2.5 years. And it was an expose of the U.S. industrialists that got rich off the Hitler war machine building. Well, those industrialists found out about it, and they managed to replace the president of the college where he wrote the PhD dissertation with one of their own. So when he appoints the committee, the dissertation review committee. So when he went before the committee to get approval for publishing his 2.5 years of work, they voted 8-1 against publishing, and he was devastated. And I said, well, I could identify with that too. I never got to go to trial on the biggest case I ever had. And so the president calls him into his office. Now keep in mind, he's the enemy, and he's falsely commiserating with the gentleman that wrote the PhD dissertation. Incidentally, the 8-1, the one vote was by the faculty person that he was writing the dissertation for. So he told the candidate that, you shouldn't let this go to waste. You should go ahead and publish it, but make it a novel. So I threw the book up at the ceiling and grabbed my legal notepad, outlined 16 chapters of what became Stark Justice, my first novel. And Stark, again, I had never written a novel before. I didn't know what I was doing. But I outlined 16 chapters, and then I got chicken. I just subscribed to Writer's Digest, read a number of articles that came out every month, and found out that most of my outline covered everything that they said I should cover. So the last article I read was by John Grisham, and he said he outlined a critical mass, and that struck a chord with me. So I pulled out my outline, and pretty soon it was 28 chapters in super detail.
So let's help our listeners out with the timeline. This was when you were still a lawyer in the 80s, before you were ever a judge.
Correct.
Okay. And I know that you didn't release this book until, well, we'll get to the next part. So what's next?
So I started writing the book, and I got first chapter done, started the second chapter, and I got appointed to the bench. And as you know, we're not trained to be judges. So it took me about 10 years to learn how to be a judge. And I could have finished the book at that time, but I knew God wanted me to write the book. And I thought, well, if I finish it now, he might off me.
Well, you were busy.
I was busy, but after 10 years, I could have squeezed it in on weekends and whatnot.
I don't know. With some of the cases that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming podcasts, I know. I mean, you guys can Google him, but...
Well, it was intense, especially the first 10 years.
Yeah, you did not have a typical rural judge job.
I agree.
We are in the Pacific Northwest, people. Don't forget that. We are known for some crazy people out there.
All right. So anyway, after 10 years, I put it off. And then finally, I got to retire. And like I said at the earlier podcast, I wanted to learn how to play the vibraphone. So, and then that crashed. So then I worked on my handicap on the golf course, and I managed to get it down to a 10. And I didn't want to go lower than that because almost everybody I know that went from from double digit to single digit got divorced because they spent so much time on the golf course. So
that's why.
I wanted to stay happily married, so I stopped at 10. So all that was left was to finish my novel. So in December, in the COVID era, I told my wife, okay, I'm going to finish the novel.
So December 2020.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And so she rolled her eyes like, yeah, right. You've been saying that for 30 years. But fortunately, my son-in-law can't lie. And so he was over for Christmas, and I gave him the first chapter and a half to read, and I asked him for a one-word answer and a review. And so he sat down, read it, came back, and said, intense. Now, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know why I thought that was the wrong reaction, but I felt it was. So fortunately, because I was a member of the Right on the River group, local writers group here, since I'd published my judge book, they had a Zoom workshop in January. And I thought, well, maybe I better take this workshop. Well, the workshop focused a lot on flashbacks. And my novel was a total series of flashbacks from beginning to end. And they didn't like flashbacks. They taught that you should use them sparingly, you should mix them between narratives and scenes. And I thought, okay, that's why he thinks it's intense, I think. In any event, I went, they had a book in the bibliography of this workshop called Story Engineering. So I thought, well, I better buy that book. So I bought that book in February, read that, discovered that all fiction is the same, meaning that like a house, all houses have foundations, walls, and a roof. And all fiction, whether it's TV, movie, novels, plays, they all have an inciting incident, a first major plot point, a second major plot point. There's rules. You have to disclose everything to the reader within the first 3/4 of the book so that they can figure out the ending if they pick up on the hints. And you can't introduce some wacko thing like an alien comes down from space and saves the
Right.
the
I
damsel.
feel like they teach this to you in school. I mean, at some basic level. Of course, you can always reiterate it later in life to learn it. But I kind of remember learning about this and,
Well, I must not have been paying attention because I didn't know that.
You were arguing with people. That's why you became a lawyer, right? You were too busy with that.
Well, the nice part about learning about how it's structured, how creative writing is structured, I could start figuring out the end of movies now.
Oh, yeah, yes. Once you understand that, it ruins movies.
My wife could always figure it out, and I could never figure it out.
She paid attention in school.
Well, yeah, she probably did. I know I didn't as much as I should
No,
have.
you did. You have your niches.
So the next thing I did is I went to Office Depot, bought a 3-ring binder with dividers and a stack of sticky notes. And because I had such a detailed 28-chapter outline, I put each detail on a separate sticky note and totally reorganized my outline, putting the sticky notes in the right spot in the binder. By the time I was done, I was 6 scenes short of a 90,000-word novel. And this gentleman that wrote Story Engineering said that's the ideal length of a novel. So I thought, well, heck, I can make up 6 scenes while I write it. So I went ahead and started writing. That was in late February. By December, I'd written 88,000 words. I thought, dang, I'm going to finish this.
Yeah, okay.
But I hadn't spoken to my client or former client for over 30 years. So I looked him up on the internet, and he had a phone number. I said, great. So in January, I finished the book, and it was 95,000 words, but sweet spot was 90,110. So I figured, okay, I'm still in the sweet spot. And I called the number. It was disconnected. So for $4.99, I could hire a firm to do an internet search for him. So I paid the $5. They couldn't find him. But they found a woman in her 30s that had the same unique first name spelling that my client's daughter had, and she was about 3 years old when I represented him.
Okay.
And I thought, that's got to be her. So I called the number and told her who I was and why I was calling. She just about dropped the phone. She said, "Yeah, that's my dad. We disconnected his number because we were moving him into my house so I could take care of him because his health is really going downhill." And he had just told me a couple of weeks ago that he had a lawyer once that was going to write a book about him. And I said, "Yeah, I'm he." And
he probably always said, "There's going to be a book about me one day."
And they're thinking this old guy. No, that was me. And so they came to our community for his health care quite frequently. So we arranged to have dinner at a Denny's. And that night, they didn't need electricity. She's beaming that this retired judge wrote a book about her dad. He's beaming, "I told you so. I told you so."
Yeah. Oh, I can think of story. Yeah.
And I'm beaming that I got it to him before he passed away. I had printed it off in my home computer and had it bound at Office Depot and gave him the manuscript.
Gosh.
And it was really cool. It turned out that his daughter that he moved in with had a younger sister that didn't exist when I represented him, and she moved in too, and she read him the entire manuscript, and about 3 weeks later he passed away.
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, at least he got to have that joy of seeing that his stories were real. I can't imagine if all my dad's stories were real. Maybe I should start putting more faith into that, because, you know, a lot of times we think our parents are just, oh yeah, they're blowing smoke up our butts, but no, that's really cool. You gave that to him beforehand, and now the girls have the book, right? So
they do, and I was surprised. I didn't know at the time, but my client had a sister, and she got the book, unbeknownst to me, and she wrote a review on Amazon. And
oh wow, okay,
that was kind of real touching.
Something
review.
Everlasting.
Yeah.
So no, that's great.
Special deal.
Well,
so that was the first book of my trilogy.
Okay.
And I thought I was done. Again, like I finished the judge book, I'm done. No, God wants me to write Stark Justice. Okay, I did that. So am I writing any more? I don't think so. Until I surprisingly get a huge amount of royalties on my judge book. And I thought, well, maybe I should publish Stark Justice and think about other books. And the people that published Stark Justice told me that because it was about a civil case, a personal injury case, it may not get the reader's attention as much as, like you like, true crime. And so I thought, well, I've had a number of high-profile criminal cases. Maybe I should rethink this.
Yeah, so I think that's about time for a break now.
The Smoke and Gavel podcast is sponsored by Judge Small Books and Gatekeeper Press, a full-service publishing company empowering authors with complete creative control, professional guidance, and 100% royalties. Whether you're publishing your first book or your 10th, their team makes the process simple, transparent, and truly author-friendly. Listeners of the show can receive a 10% off any publishing package with Gatekeeper Press. Just mention the code CHIPSMALL when requesting a quote or during your free consultation at gatekeeperpress.com.
So now let's talk about why you were forced to leave your home to avoid a killer on the prowl, and how that ties into your next book, True Justice.
Okay, so as I said, I had a lot of high-profile cases, remarkable cases, cases that most other judges aren't blessed to preside over. And one of the most significant to me personally was a case involving an ex-husband and an ex-wife. And that case happened the very first year I was on the bench. I hadn't even been on the bench a year. And if you remember, judges don't get training before they go on the bench.
Yeah.
But our state does offer 1 week of training once a year. Well, I took the bench in June, and that training wasn't going to happen until the last week of the following February. So I get this case before that training, and the case involves an ex-husband and ex-wife that went through a very bitter divorce. The husband was alleged to have been psychologically abusive so much to the wife that she essentially had a nervous breakdown.
Right.
She didn't have a lawyer. They had 4 daughters, and by the time of the trial, she couldn't take care of herself. And one of the unfortunate situations that judges have when they take the bench in a family law case, we only have 2 choices to make with regard to custody of the children, the husband or the wife. There's no third choice. A lot of times we'd like there to be one, but there isn't. So the trial judge, years before, had given custody to the father, the abusive father, the psychologically abusive father, because the mom couldn't take care of herself. It was a sad situation. But the judge ordered that the children be given counseling to get them through the divorce and to make sure they have a good relationship with their mother. Well, years later, she gets healthy again. She gets a new partner. Life is really good. And after years, the girl still hadn't had counseling. And so she had gone to a number of different judges a number of different times to ask the ex-husband to be found in contempt. And they found him in contempt. But he still hadn't taken the girls to counseling. So by the time I got the case, it was another contempt motion. They still hadn't had 1 minute of counseling. And incredibly to me, he hadn't spent 1 hour in jail. So I couldn't figure out why, but I knew he was in contempt. The evidence was basically undisputed. They'd never gone to counseling. So I found him in contempt the Friday before the 1-week training that was coming up, and scheduled a hearing to impose sanctions for his contempt a week later. So I'd have the training in between. And so I went to the Judicial College of our state for a week, where all the instructors are experienced trial court judges. So I ran by the facts of my case to all those judges, and every one of them said they couldn't believe he hadn't been in jail 3 years earlier.
So to back people up, basically you are taking over a case that a different judge made decisions on, that, hey, the guy can have the children need to go to counseling. By the time it comes to you, nothing has happened.
Correct.
And you're trying to educate yourself more to figure out what to do in this situation.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Early 90s.
they all agreed that jail's warranted. So the following Monday, after I went through the training, I had arranged previously to have the girls be with their mom the weekend right after the first hearing and the following weekend as well. And I had the mother bring the kids to the courthouse, not to the courtroom, but I wanted to be able to speak to the girls after the hearing. So they were held in the victim witness unit of our prosecutor's office while the mom and the dad were in my courtroom. So in part what I ordered was that he go to jail. He had a full-time job. I didn't want to jeopardize that. So I imposed the jail to be served on 5 consecutive weekends, which would give the mom 5 consecutive weekends with her daughters to start repairing that relationship. I again ordered counseling for the girls. And I ordered that the jail begin at 5 p.m. on March 6th. So that was on a Monday. The following Friday is March 6th. About 2 a.m. on March 6th, I get a phone call, and it's from a deputy sheriff. Now, normally I wouldn't even hear the phone, but my wife was off on a ski trip, and so she wasn't home. Our dog is deaf, but for some reason I heard the phone ring. So I answered the phone, and it was the sheriff. And I thought, well, they must need a warrant. That's when we get middle of the night calls. They need a warrant.
Hey, Judge, need a warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead, he said, this is Deputy Sheriff so-and-so. There's a homicide and several attempted homicides at multiple locations, and we have reason to believe the suspect is after you. Then he told me the suspect's name, which was the name of the ex-husband. Okay, now my hearing is really good.
Yeah.
And I explained to the deputy sheriff that my wife's gone, my dog is deaf.
Not a good time to have a deaf dog. Or the wife being gone.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And I'm in bed. My hearing's really good now. My kids are way upstairs.
When the kids are home, that
Yeah.
adds an extra layer there.
And it's a big house. So I told the deputy
Right.
he could be in my house right now, And he said, "Well, do you have any weapons at home, Your Honor?" And I said, "Well, I got an electric carving knife, but that's about it." So
It's not Thanksgiving.
yeah. So I asked him if he could send somebody to the house because I got my kids upstairs, and he said, "Well, they're all trying to find him right now, Judge." And I said, "Well, I want you to find him." He said,
Yeah.
"I lived a little outside the city limits in the county." I said, "Could you send a city cop?" Oh, good idea, Judge. Hang on. I said, "I'm not going anywhere." And within a couple minutes, he gets back on the line and said, "Yep, we've got 2 units coming to your house." And I said, "Well, if you don't mind, let's stay on the phone until they get here." He said, "Okay, Judge, that's fine." So remarkably, within just a few minutes, I thought it was going to feel like an hour, but it was in a few minutes. I see the blue strobe lights hitting the walls of my bedroom, and I go up to the front door, and there's officers, 2 officers, both with their weapons drawn, going on each side of my house. I turn the outside lights on and say, "Okay, the kids are upstairs." I go down and tell the sheriff that we're getting out of there. So that led to one of the crimes that I chose to write True Justice on.
You're just going to leave us there? I mean, what happened next?
Well, I did write a book called True Justice.
Right. But this is
it's
based off. It's based. And
So I don't want to ruin the ending.
Okay. Well, are you still scared? Or were you ever scared?
Honestly, they finally caught him, and he received a very lengthy prison sentence. And he was sent to our maximum security prison. Well, he was there for at least 10 years, maybe more, maybe as much as 20, I'm not sure. And I got a call from one of the daughters. She wanted me to know that her dad had followed all of the disciplinary rules at the maximum security prison so that he could be reclassified to medium security. And he'd finally achieved that, and they transferred him to a medium security prison. And she wanted me to know that because she believed he wanted to get to medium security so he'd have a chance to escape and kill me.
Yeah, you kind of ruined his life, right, in his eyes.
It was so anyway. So
Vengeful.
I think he's still in a medium security prison. Supposedly, some computer is supposed to call me if he does escape, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But hopefully, he's mellowed over the years, and I know that the good news is for the girls, they ended up getting adopted by a wonderful family, and at least the 2 older girls have done really well. In fact, I exchanged Christmas cards with the oldest, and she invited me to her high school graduation, which was years later, and wrote me a note with that invitation that still makes me cry when I read it. And fortunately, one of the victims that survived his assaults, she survived. She wrote a book about her situation. She was good friends with the wife that was killed, and I felt awful because all these other people got shot by this guy, and fortunately they survived, but they went through hell trying to recover from all their wounds. And one day I ended up being asked to be a speaker at an event, and I asked my ethics attorney if it was okay for me to do so because I'm a judge, and it was a candlelight vigil for victims of domestic violence.
Right.
And I had been training domestic violence protection advocates for years, but I always had to preface my remarks to them that I'm a judge. And so I'm not for them or against them, but I have to rule on whether their clients can get a protection order. And sometimes women lie about the supposed violence, and I have to make that call at the trial.
Right.
And so I've got to be fair. But I'm happy to explain to you how the system works, so you can educate your clients. And I said if I was approached by a group of perpetrators that wanted to know about the system, I would meet with them also. Turns out years later I was asked a couple of times, and that's a whole other story. But in any event, I made the preface, or I intended to make the preface at this event so I could go. Well, when I got there, one of the ex-husband's victims was there, and I just wanted to crawl under the stage. And she saw the stricken look on my face, and she strode right up to me, and oh man, I got to get out of here. And she said, no, Judge, you need to know that after your ruling, that was the happiest day of the mom's life, that somebody finally believed her and supported what she was trying to get for her daughters. And so that helped a little. I know my decision caused her ex to kill her, but that helped. And then when the older daughter contacted me later about the high school and all that helped too. But so that, like I said, I picked that particular case to inspire me to come up with a fictionalized version of it with True Justice, and that's how the trilogy began. The trilogy right now consists of 2 books, Stark Justice and True Justice, and I fully intend to write Blind Justice, the 3rd book of the trilogy, assuming my listeners to this podcast demand that I write it.
Oh, I think they will. I demand that you write it. So let's talk about next week. What are we going to cover?
Well, next week we're going to cover the murder of a local deputy sheriff in our community. When I sat down to outline True Justice, I wanted to make it more challenging for me. So instead of just one case, I wanted to use 2 cases. So you heard about the family law case with the murdered ex-wife. This other case I used to inspire True Justice involved the only killing of a deputy sheriff while he was on duty in our county's history. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was the presiding judge for that case. And it's a case that I took a lot of poetic license on. It's that what I wrote in True Justice was totally different.
You changed the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you changed the outcome. More of a, well, we won't tell too much to the readers.
We can get into it.
In fact, I would say that the deputy sheriff's sister actually read the story, and she cried because of the outcome that you gave, like what we want in the justice system. So
that's what we'll talk about at the next episode.
Okay.
So we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Smoke and Gavel podcast. To learn more, visit judgesmallbooks.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to stay connected. Until next time, God bless.